Hello and welcome to a new episode of Versus, the show where we compare old generation aircraft models with new generation aircraft models and take a look at the details and see if and how they have changed over time. This of course means that we are not comparing liveries. And as you already can see in today's episode, we are taking a look at a Boeing 737-300. Now, the old generation is represented here by Deutsche BA, a former subsidiary of British Airways, and the new generation aircraft is represented here by Lufthansa. Now, as always, we start here with the box, and of course we can already see a difference here. Now, the old generation box is much smaller than the new generation box, and on the front, as we can see here, we only have a rendition of the aircraft itself, not a photo. Now, if we take a look at the new generation box, as I said, it's bigger, but we also have a nice image of the actual aircraft on the front. The same thing goes for the backside of the box. Here we can see the backside of the old generation box, where you can have only the rendition of the aircraft. We have the original dimensions of the aircraft. And if we then take a look at the new generation box, we can see here we have a very nice image on the backside, and we do also have the original dimensions and some more information. More or less the same thing like with the old generation box, but slightly different layout. But all in all, pretty identical. But let us take a look at what actually matters in this comparison. That's of course the aircraft models themselves. And the first thing that comes to mind when you compare an old generation aircraft model with the new generation aircraft model is, of course, there is an obvious difference in height. Now we can see this difference in height here in the front, but we can of course also see it here in the back. But we do of course all know why we have this difference, and that is simply down to the difference in detailing of the landing gear. The landing gear of the old generation is much less detailed and much bigger, and therefore the aircraft gets higher than the new generation aircraft. But there are many more interesting details to take a look at, so let's move on and we take a look at the wings. Now, if we take a look here on the left side, we have the old generation wing, and on the right side we have the new generation wing. Now, on first glimpse, the old generation wing does actually look better, but in real life they are pretty much identical. The reason why they are not here is simply because the new generation wing is white, which makes it much more difficult to catch the details when you're filming it. But it's actually not bad at all when you compare the old generation with the new generation wing. And if you take a look on the underside, in that case the picture becomes a bit more clear. In my opinion, the new generation wing looks much better here, simply because the details are more refined than on the old generation. Now, it's a similar story with the horizontal stabilizer here on the back of the aircraft. Now here we can see the old generation aircraft, and you can see how they have taken a whole piece and put it into the fuselage. If you compare that with the new generation aircraft, we can't actually see whether the horizontal stabilizer is one or two pieces, because it's completely melted into the fuselage, which of course looks much better. Now, one detail where the old generation is not any less than the new generation is the detail of the engines, especially when you take a look inside the engine, where you can see the fan blades here on the old generation, and it's actually more difficult to see them on the new generation. This is, however, mostly down to the fact that the engine inside the new generation has a different color, which makes it much more difficult to catch it on camera. And if we are taking a look, for example, at a detail on the printing, now we are not looking at the livery, but on the print quality and the details they have printed on the aircraft itself. And for example here, if you take a look just above the wing, we can see on the old generation we have the emergency exit printed on, and we do also have that on the new generation. But that just proves that the old generation is really not bad at all. But there are of course also details where the aircraft differentiate from each other. Now, if you take a look at the cockpit, the new generation has slightly more details, although one fact is of course that the window configuration is slightly different. Now, both aircrafts are of the 300 series, but they are not exactly the same aircraft type. There are slightly different variations within the 300 series, and they're not exactly the same type. And that explains this difference, but nevertheless the details around the windows are much nicer on the new generation. Now, if I had to pick a winner out of this match, of course I would go with the new generation, there's no doubt. All details are just a little bit or a lot better than on the old generation. But the old generation is really not bad. Of course, the landing gear kills it completely, it makes it almost impossible to look at. But when you think about it, the old generation aircraft I bought sometime in the mid-1990s, and the new generation I've bought sometime after 2010. That's a gap of at least 15 years, and you would think that the difference in details would be much greater than they actually are. So the old generation aircraft is really not that bad if you, as I said, take away the landing gear. Now, another thing you have to consider is if you go out today and buy an old generation aircraft, that will only cost you a few euros. If you buy a new generation aircraft, that will cost you 20-30 euros, maybe even more. Now with that, we have reached the end of this episode. If you have enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, that would be very nice. Or if you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And especially if you would like to see more episodes like this, be sure to smash that like button and show your support for the series. Now with that, I would like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.